Namaskar, I'm Harpreet Kaur and I welcome you all to our live and interactive session. You're watching us on PM eVidya channels 6 to 12 and also on our YouTube handle NCERT Official. This is our 5-day, 5-hour online training program under the umbrella theme of Open Educational Resources OER Innovating Education. This online training program is brought to you by CIET NCERT in collaboration with CIEMCA, that is Commonwealth Educational Media Centre for Asia. Well, this is a training program which means you can participate in the session with your questions, suggestions and feedback. And on the last day of the training session, there is going to be an assessment as well. If you score more than 70%, you will be granted a certificate. And assessment courses will be released soon. For the same, you need to log on to our CIET website for enhanced guidelines and instructions. Now, let me give you all the details through which you can get in touch with us and you can ask your questions if at all there is any doubt. Even in the middle of the presentation, please feel free to connect with us. Our phone number is 8800440559. We also have a dedicated email ID for you, that is training.helpdesk@ciet.nic.in. And since we are streaming live on our YouTube handle NCERT Official, you can go to the live chat box or the comment section and post your questions there. Today we are in day 1 of the training session and the topic that we have taken up is Open Educational Resources OER, Concept, Scope and Evolution. It is important to understand what exactly do we mean by open educational resources, what all differences it is bringing to the entire educational scenario and how they are benefiting the intended users. So we will definitely have a detailed discussion on the same, and to throw light on the key aspects of OER, we are joined by our experts. So please join me in welcoming Dr. B. Shadrach, sir is Director of CIEMCA from New Delhi. Sir, namaskar and very warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Now, sir, before you delve deep into your presentation, I really want to understand what all points you'll be covering in the session today, because this is a very important concept and we all must be familiar with it.
Sure. So, I have a slide that talks about what are all points that I am going to cover.
Sure.
So, can we have my slide deck, please?
Yes, we can have the PPT on the screen. And yeah, here it is.
Okay, so these are the points that I am going to cover today. First of all, thank you for having me in your studio.
Our pleasure.
I would also like to thank Dr. Angel Ratnabai, who had suggested that I would come out and speak.
Sure.
So today, as you mentioned, the open education resources is something that is very familiar to many people, but may not be so to the school teachers.
True.
So today I am here to basically run through these points. I would demystify the concept, the scope of OER, the historical developments so far that we have seen. I would also like to touch upon some of these aspects from the scriptures, as to how OER has been dealt with in the scriptures, and of course the future of OER as well. So that's what I'm going to cover.
Well, scriptures, that sound really interesting. I'm looking forward to this entire presentation of yours, sir. So now I request you to kindly go ahead with the same. If at all we are having questions from our viewers, we will take them up in the end.
Sure.
Please, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So first I would like to go with the definition, which is something that many people would want to really know.
Right. Okay. The concept of OER.
Yeah, so I have a problem, this.
Yes. You would like to go with the concept of OER, right?
Okay, let me go back. Sure. So first let us look at the definition of OER. Before we go into the concept, I want to place this definition, which is the UNESCO definition.
Okay.
UNESCO came up with a set of recommendations in 2019, where the open education resources are defined to be learning, teaching and research material in any format and any medium that reside in the public domain or under copyright that have been released under an open license. And also OER should permit anyone to access it without any cost, reuse it, repurpose it adapt it and redistribute. So there are lots of words here. So I want to basically run through quickly what do this mean. First, we said OERs could be in any format or any medium. So in other words, this could be textbooks, this could be courses, this could be videos, audio material, this could be also software, any recording, any type of material that is digital or non-digital, which could be defined to be OERs. We also mentioned in the definition that it could be in the public domain or openly licensed. If it is in the public domain, it does not mean that it is OER. Anything that is free on the internet is not OER, but if it is in the public domain, it has to be copyrighted, but provided for free access and without any infringement of copyright. But there is also another layer which goes on to explain that open education resources are to be at no cost access. So the very ethos of open education resources is to make education material available free of cost, so that the users need not have to pay for it. And finally, we also have the aspects of reuse, repurpose, readaptation, redistribution and so on, which is where I would be explaining a bit later around the concept of 5 Rs in the OER. So that is the definition of OER. Now I would be quickly running through these concepts in these 6 paradigms. First, we mentioned that OERs are basically unlocking the knowledge for everyone. It is providing access to high quality learning material for free, for unrestricted access, for anybody who would like to use it. In other words, we are making knowledge a public good.
Right. So
that is the first concept of the OER, which is unlocking the potential. The second concept is very interesting, because this is where the 5 Rs that I mentioned earlier come into play. 5 Rs are basically the idea of retaining, reusing, revising, remixing and redistribution. Let us go quickly one after another. What is retaining? Retaining means if there is OER in digitally accessible format, you can retain it. That means you have the right to make it your own and control the copies of the content. When it comes to reuse, not only you own that content because it is free and you have downloaded, but you can also use that content for any study purpose. In the classroom, if you are a teacher, you can use the OER in the classrooms. You could make it available to students. So the idea of use is something, reuse is something guaranteed. The third aspect is revise. So if there is OER and you want to revise, adapt it, adjust it or modify the content, you are free to do so. And in other words, you can alter content at any point in time that you wish to alter it. The fourth R is remixing. For instance, you have your own content, you have the open education resources available, you can remix it. You can combine these two, the original content with your own content and make it available to your students. And finally, you can redistribute. Freely you can redistribute the copies of the content without any inhibition. So these are the 5 Rs of the OER, which is something that we need to keep in mind. Now one may ask me another question. So you mentioned about the range of OERs. What are the types of OER? Earlier I alluded to this. OERs could be textbooks, OERs could be full courses, it could be the entire program made available in OER, like some universities have done so. It could be modules, it could be units, it could be micro credentials and so on. It could be also lesson plans, syllabus or assignments people submit. It could also be as I mentioned modular content which could be individual lesson plans, it could be videos, simulations, quizzes, sometimes could be also made available. And today it is interesting that many of the software developers are making their software open. So, softwares and tools could also be deemed to be open education resources. It fall under the umbrella of OER. And finally, the multimedia content, it could be images, it could be audio files, videos which are openly licensed, made available to anybody.
Okay.
Now, I would like to go on to basically enlisting the benefits of OER. So, within the concept we talked about the unlocking the potential of knowledge, the 5 Rs, the types of OER. Now, we are here to basically look at the benefits of OER. What are the major benefits of OER today? First and the foremost benefit is increased access to content. Many a times people living in rural areas, remote areas do not have access to content the way that we access. So, it eliminates the cost of textbooks and also making available learning material without any financial barrier for students, promoting equitable access to open education resources. So, affordability and accessibility are the main benefits. The second major benefit that I see is the opportunity to enhance your learning and teaching activity in the classrooms. Now, oftentimes we have the textbooks and we have the curriculum and our own teachers' teaching style as the mainstay in our classrooms. But with the help of open education resources, you can bring those also into the classrooms, make this available. So, students can in turn have access to a variety of material, not just the simple textbook. Textbook actually provides a kind of a textbook-ish kind of a knowledge, whereas the open education resources could be in various other forms. The third benefit mainly for the teachers is collaboration. Teachers can collaborate and innovate newer content, new ways of teaching those content, new activities that they can bring in. So, a variety of collaborative opportunities are made available through these OERs. And the final benefit, and we would also come back to the benefits later on as well, but the final benefit in the opening slides that I would like to highlight is the fact that OER empowers the learners to become lifelong learners, because they have not just the textbooks, not just the teachers teaching them, they have this material accessible to them, so that at any time they could access this content and enrich their knowledge in the particular field. So, having said something about the benefits, I also need to highlight the challenges. What are the challenges today that we find in the OER domain? While open education resources is a term that is broadly understood to be for any type of content that I mentioned, right from textbooks to quizzes to videos to lectures to lesson plans and whatnot, one will have to be conscious of the quality of content. Oftentimes there is no quality assured in OERs, because it is individuals who basically upload this as open content. So, there is no vetting agency that looks at your content to say that this is of some quality. So, the quality can vary. The second aspect is sustainability. Oftentimes, we put out some of our content immediately, but then we use the Facebook or any social media. Initially, we have that enthusiasm, then later on it actually fades away. So, oftentimes even within an institution, if we have a open education resources repository, we do not sustain it because we do not encourage our faculty members to upload, we do not maintain the repository. Sometimes files move in the electronic domain from one place to another, so we do not update the file pathway. Many a times OERs are not very well known, there is not much awareness amongst, so even the teachers who are watching, many of them may not even know that they could be a part of this OER community. So, there is a lot of capacity building needs to be happening, such as this one. This is basically to create awareness among the teachers on OER, but this should be coupled with full-fledged capacity building program. Oftentimes people do not have the resources to do that. There is also this copyright issue. I mentioned about openly licensed, free, even in the public domain, but openly licensed for reuse, repurposing, redistribution and so on. So, sometimes this is a bit complex for some teachers. They do not really get it that easily. So, sometimes this copyright licensing issues, the complexities of those make it confusing. Finally, the accessibility issues. Because these are available largely in the public domain in online systems, many a times people in rural and remote areas may or may not have access to the internet. That makes it a little difficult for them to access. So, these are the challenges of OER that I wanted to highlight here. Now, what are the examples of OERs? Now, oftentimes we have some examples globally, but I will also highlight two examples from India. First and the foremost is the OER Commons, a comprehensive digital library of all the open education resources in any subject and any format. My own organization, Commonwealth of Learning, has something called OSS, which is all education and skill oriented content that is available free, openly licensed for anybody to use. There is a concept called Open Stacks, where a leading publisher of peer reviewed open licensed college textbooks are available. The Khan Academy, although it is popularly known for among the students and teachers, a section of the Khan Academy is also licensed under OER, freely available. So, online lessons and exercises on variety of subjects are made available. But the foremost OER came about in the early 2000 when the MIT released most of its courseware as open courseware. And Merlot, the multimedia educational resources for learning and online teaching, is another site where you have curated collection of peer reviewed OER. In India, although we do not have clearly specified open licenses in the SWAYAM portal, in DIKSHA portal or in NPTEL, these are very popular open education resources. I am sure sooner than later they would attach this open license tag to it so that it is made completely open education as open education resources. Okay, so we so far looked at the definition of OER, we looked at the concept of OER, the concept divided into variety of sections. I alluded to 5 Rs, the benefits, the types, the challenges and also the examples. Now, I want to quickly go into the history of OER. Interestingly, the modern OER is understood to be the way that I mentioned, free of cost, openly licensed, where you can retain, reuse, revise, remix, redistribute. It is in variety of formats, it could be digital, non-digital, but the aspects of access and equity are taken care of. There is a kind of a community and collaborative effort behind the OER formula. But let us look at the OER in the ancient times. It would be very interesting for us to look at the idea of OER say 10 centuries ago. How were OERs then? Now, the ancient libraries and knowledge sharing function that we read and we know about are to be also seen as OER. Accessibility for scholars through say famous ancient libraries like the Library of Alexandria, Library of Pergamum and very many centers of learning are seen to be the beginning of the open education concept. We also in our region, Takshila, Nalanda and Vikramashila, where they had huge libraries, many multi-story buildings were pitched to be libraries, where a lot of scholars from the east and the west came and studied. Although over a period of time, all these have been reduced to historic ruins, but these were the seat of what they call the ancient higher learning centers. We also know that before the printing press, scribes used to basically manually copy. So, they used to go to the libraries and take the texts, reproduce this by hand so that the desire to preserve and make available and distribute to others was also carried out. And in very many temples we see royal temples and royal archives, such as the ancient civilization in Mesopotamia, for instance, or Egypt served as a major religious area where they preserved both administrative and religious textbooks, historical knowledge. So, this is one way that we practiced open education, mainly through ancient libraries and knowledge sharing functions. We also had open education, the concept of open education in oral traditions and performances. The public dissemination of knowledge in the ancient times was through storytelling, epic poems, public performances, people came out and performed. So, these served to be education tools those days for sharing history, cultural values, practical wisdom across communities, and the forms of open access to cultural and historic information can be seen, this form could be seen as a precursor to the modern OER that we know. We also know another form of open education setting, which is through the apprenticeships, and skill transfer happened even within the household, within the communities. The master trainers trained learners, and this kind of crafts knowledge, trades knowledge went from generation to generation, and this could also be seen to be open education. So, open education was practiced in ancient libraries, oral traditions, and also the public education opportunities through scholarship. Now, the Plato's Academy is one good example. Aristotle's Lyceum in ancient Greece is another example where knowledge was openly discussed, debated and shared among scholars. We also had this idea of public lectures and rhetorics. Even today, if you go to Hyde Park, there is in the northeastern part, there is a place called Speaker's Corner, where anybody can come out and speak, and there will be people listening too. So, the idea of public lectures and public rhetoric also was seen to be one of the ways that people communicated and shared knowledge in an open manner. So, these are open for sharing ideas which went on from generation to generation, and people did this very interestingly. So, not only oral traditions, storytelling, public lectures and debates, libraries and archives, religious texts and teachings, and I also mentioned about apprenticeships and guild system. The development of writing systems and spread of literacy was also something very interesting for us, because literacy spread through papyrus and parchments and some of these elements. And we also started compiling knowledge through the ancient encyclopedias, what they call Naturalis Historia or Etymologia, and concepts of that kind.
Okay.
And in some cases we also seen translation efforts. So, a variety of Greek scientific and philosophical work were translated into Arabic, so that the Arabs could access that knowledge through the Abbasid Caliphate and others. And the early form of textbooks can also be pitched to be OERs. So, interestingly, OER is not a new concept. OER is a very age-old concept, practiced very interestingly, but only since the early 2000 we have seen OER to be much spoken about, discussed. But having said that, I want to really go to the scriptures to see what different scriptures say. Interestingly, to begin with, the biblical narrative is all about the core mandate of the biblical narrative is to teach and disseminate. The central theme is of the command is not to hoard divine knowledge, but to share it widely. In the Old Testament, God commands the Israelites to diligently teach the laws to the children, and in the New Testament this culminates into Great Commission. Now, the Bible also talks about accessibility and reaching the common people. Reaching the common people in relatable stories in the way that people would want to understand. So if you read in the Bible, farming, fishing, baking, all these are mixed to combine the spiritual truth. Similarly, you have the recontextualizing and adaptation, because when people started to compile the Holy Book, they started translating and adapting it to the cultures. So this is where we see revising and remixing concept of OER. We also see the power of community, where community coming together to basically sharing knowledge and taking it to the next level. So let's look at the Gita. The Gita's philosophy is all about Guru and Shiksha. Guru basically, the monologue is basically converted into dynamic dialogue between Guru and Shishya. So this is one way of open education. So this is the open dialogue and inquiry that the Gita actually promotes. And also Gita talks about accessibility through multiple paths. Not just one path, multiple paths, which is something that OER also teaches us to be, the flexible idea and subject the various materials and methods used basically to acquire knowledge. We also see in the Gita the adaptation through commentary. So it's not that the Holy Book, but it's also the commentary provided by people like Shankara, Ramanuja, Madhava and others later on. So that so here you see the concept of revising and remixing. And of course Gita is today not just oral tradition, it's digital commons. You see a lot of these epics and new forms of digital formats emerge. When it comes to the Quran, you see the idea of open education is in the premise of read, Ikra, what they call. Ikra is all about reading, knowledge. Similarly, what they call Sadak Zariya, knowledge as a continuous charity. Knowledge is not something that you hold, it's charity you give. So the Sadak Zariya is kind of an ongoing charity which continues to reap rewards only when it is shared. They also have that universal access to the core text. The Quran is a kind of a universal text, but it has to have access. And you also have what they call ulama, the community of scholars, basically looking at the text and creating that debatable open education ecosystem. When it comes to the Sikhism, you see that the whole idea of Sikhism is founded on Gyan, the spiritual wisdom, where the path to enlightenment and connection with one universal creator, Ek Onkar, is the idea of approaching knowledge, and inherently it's open and social. The ultimate remix of wisdom is very clearly seen in Guru Granth Sahib.
Yes.
And also the radical accessibility in practice. Gurmukhi script itself, where it's designed to phonetically simplify and easy to kind of understand and digest. That is the idea with which Gurmukhi script was brought about, where a complex script can be easily understood by common people. You also see in the Sikhism community as the center of learning, Sangat, what they call.
Sangat, yeah.
Sangat. So Sangat is the idea of truth realized through a company of congregation of community. So this is also another form of OER in practice, because OER we see community of practice, where educators come together to share content and debate. So Sangat is another way. And finally, I think in Sikhism, the idea of seva, knowledge itself as a service.
Yes.
Seva is something that selfless service is central to Sikh life, sharing knowledge, teaching others, creating resources for the benefit of the community.
True.
And I also want to not leave behind Jainism here, because in Jainism you have that three jewels: right faith, right knowledge, right conduct. This is the kind of a foundation of Jain philosophy, where the philosophy of openness, interdependence of knowledge and progress, preservation and dissemination, all these we see in the Jainism. So in the scriptures, although the modern OER would have copyright, licensing, technology, scalability, universal access, all these concepts, but in its own way the scriptures traditionally for many generations, many centuries have promoted the concept of OER. So, having run through the concept of OER, the ancient understanding of OER, the modern understanding of OER, I want to quickly run through the need for OER today. Why we need OER? Okay, so we know that scriptures followed, religions followed and all that, but why do we need more than before the idea of OER? First, as I mentioned earlier, affordability. We conducted a survey in a few geographies where we found out that the cost of accessing textbooks, in India thankfully textbooks are subsidized. There is a governmental program that distributes textbooks even free for children who cannot afford it, but in many geographies textbook affordability is a major financial burden for students. Now, overall education expenses are becoming extremely high. You know, thankfully at the school level today we do not see that yet, but who knows, in days to come, you know, education is likely to become expensive. So, one way to ease that burden would be to share the knowledge resources. We also feel that the need for OER emerges from the idea of enhancing access and enhancing quality. The moment you put out something in the open domain, you are putting your content to test. 4 people would comment on it. So, you better enhance the quality of it. You do not want to put out in the public domain something of substandard quality. So, quality is enhanced, and not only the financial constraints that I talked about, but also the constraints of being in remote and rural areas and so on. So, democratizing access to content is something that we see as the need. We also see the need for inclusivity. So, children with specific learning disabilities or children with the learners with the disability, all forms of disability, may find it easier to access certain things augmented by technology, made available for free. So, if braille books were to be expensive, how will they actually access it? So, making education material in various accessible formats for free is something that we want to see as as the steer for creating OER. Now, we also see one of the needs for OER is to improve teaching and learning practices. Now, oftentimes there is no flexibility with regard to teaching. They have the textbook and they have their own knowledge that they gained when they were students, and the teachers continue to teach. But OERs allow educators to adapt, modify, remix existing material with the specific goals for the day. So, for that particular day, whatever they want to teach, they can pick up material and teach. So, it becomes timely, relevant. Unlike static textbooks, you can bring in dynamic content and also relate with daily occurrences as you see. And OERs are also in different formats, text as I mentioned, video, audio, simulations, which can cater to the variety of learning styles. Some people learn from text, some people see and watch and learn, some people listen and learn. So, because you have OERs available in multiple formats, it makes it easier for them. It also encourages innovation amongst the teachers community, also the learners community. So, they can share their adaptation. So, if I am a teacher, I have an adapted content, I can share it with another teacher and I can create something and celebrate it. And finally, it also improves teaching and learning through supplementing the existing material. So, filling the gaps, bringing in quizzes, alternative explanation to a concept and so on. And it also, I feel, empower teachers and learners, so that students are active participants, not as passive learners. So, it also promotes the idea of lifelong learning among the students, and finally, they take self responsibility for learning. So, that is something that we see OER promotes. Now, what is the scope? Where could OER be applied? OER can be applied anywhere. all levels of education. It does not have to be just K-12 school education, it could be in higher education, it could be in vocational education, TVET, adult and continuing education. Wherever you find education and skills happening, OER can be a mainstay. Now the types we mentioned, it could be full courses, modules, units, micro credentials, open textbooks, audio resources, images, graphs, graphics, software, tools. So any type of resources could be made available to one another. And the scope is also very interesting because there is a scope for us to facilitate pedagogical approaches. You could bring in OER to enhance personalized learning. So you learn differently and I learn differently. We can use the right material for your style of learning vis-a-vis my style of learning. OERs can also enhance collaborative learning practices, and what we call the open pedagogy is the kind of a practice where you can be involved in creating, adapting, sharing materials. So this could be a kind of a regular feature for many educators. We also see OER at play in blended learning opportunities. Online and hybrid learning could be combined in a manner that you could distribute material, people can learn at home or wherever in their places, come back to school to basically debate it. So these are all the ways where there is scope for using OER. And finally, there is also OER that could, as I mentioned, reduce cost, improve access and equity, enhance quality, promote innovation, and also support policy development at an institutional level. So the scope is very wide. You could apply it anywhere, you could apply it any level of education, any type of resources could be used. You could facilitate various pedagogical approaches leading to societal impact. But I want to quickly touch upon the policy aspects of OER. Now many institutions would like to have OER policy. Even a nation would want to have an OER policy. And in India, even without an OER policy, we made very conscious effort to bring in NPTEL, SWAYAM portal, now SWAYAM Plus, DIKSHA and others. But policy is always useful to enhance access and quality, equity, bring in innovation, bring in strategic and economic benefits to communities. We can have policy to continually improve, so that we do not have to wait for those 5 years, 6 years, 10 years to revise our curriculum. OERs could be one way of actually making that curriculum dynamic and relevant to times, and it is also contextualized. With regard to strategic and economic considerations, of course, maximizing public investment is only possible through OERs. So if you really distribute 10 lakh rupee grant to 1000 institutions for their own use without any sharing, then basically you are stifling the idea of sharing. Rather, if you put this condition as a policy that whatever you create with public money should come back to the public in the public domain, then you have thousands and thousands and millions of content available for anybody to access. We also need OER policy in terms of tackling this legal and IP, intellectual property frameworks, because open licensing is very integral to open education resources, and it is important that as a policy we need to promote open licensing, and also the idea of copyright awareness and public domain advocacy is extremely important. So as I mentioned, for sustaining this OER operations, you need a national level, institutional level strategy whereby you could continue to promote the idea of OER. So I want to spend, I think we have 5 more minutes, so I want to quickly spend the next 5 minutes talking about the future of OER. Now I am not touching upon too much of the modern history of OER, partly because many of my colleagues would come out tomorrow, day after, would start talking to you about the modern OER movement. So that is why I am consciously avoiding it. But that said, I want to touch upon the future of OER, particularly in terms of how we see the future open up. The idea of artificial intelligence is something very transformative, and we see AI impacting education in all spheres of life, and no doubt it would also impact open education resources. Now, my own organization, the Commonwealth of Learning, is using AI and AI trained tools to basically curate existing OER for newer settings. So, we train artificial intelligence tools and send these AI tools across to harvest the existing OER content and further curate it for the current learning styles of students, so that the personalized learning could be supported. Now, OERs can generate a lot of images. All the images that you find in my presentation are generated by AI. I gave the command to AI, gave the settings. So, every image that you see in my presentation are AI generated. So, now what happens to this? Is it a OER content, or is it AI generated content? What is the licensing issue? So, there are issues to be dealt with. Now, AI is becoming so powerful that you can impersonate people, you can fake somebody's voice, you can create fake images, and we have seen this at play in the recent days very much. So, there will be this phenomenon called artificial intelligence shape the future of OER. It would shape sooner than later, because these bring in more challenges to data privacy, algorithm biases, and the way that this content is created and distributed using language models, both large and small, is something that we need to be conscious. We also need to be conscious of the fact that in the future there will be a shift towards collaborative and community driven models. There will be a lot of collaborative platforms. SWAYAM is one good example, where as a collaborative platform you can put out courses, take thousands of courses. Skill India Digital Hub is another one. So, a community driven approach is going to perhaps dominate the future of OER. We also see the future of OER, particularly in education institutions that go through digital transformation, would take OER increasingly seriously. So, cloud based repositories, adaptability, interoperability of these databases, so that you could go and access content from different repositories. The way that we access the internet, there will be open learning pathways and OER interoperability happening. And we also see the personalized lifelong learning pathways at play, where people could not only access content from their own institutions, they can go out and window shop content in other institutions and pick up something that is very relevant to them. So, the rise of micro credentials and nano credentials and bite-sized learning will be the basis for OER for the future. A lot of people would be creating open education content and making it available, so that people could in a variety of ways access knowledge. YouTube could be seen to be not OER, but a freely accessible content repository, where people could go and learn a lot of things, but it is not open. It is not openly licensed, but there will be concerted effort by many individuals and institutions for promoting open education content of that kind. So, if you like, open YouTube with open licenses out there. We also see people would be continuing to talk about sustainability challenges and the equity and inclusivity of OER, particularly for, as I mentioned, persons with learning challenges and learning disabilities. So, this is something that we would continue to hear. So, there will be a lot of public private partnerships around OER, there could be service based models, there could be value added services to existing content. Many of these people are doing. We ourselves are partnering with a company called Bharat Innovation Global, where we are using BEAG's faculty members to help the CBSE teachers who teach 9th standard mathematics to teach in a different manner. So, their knowledge is made available. So, this is one way of open education that we see. So, The future of OER is very interesting because largely because of the variety of emerging technologies at play, the impact of artificial intelligence, and the need that is emerging for the learners with certain learning disabilities, because it is told that every third learner for the future in the future would have some other form of learning need. So, to cater to them, the simple textbook which is written in a mass production manner may not help. So, we see the future of OER to be very interesting. So, with this I want to end my lecture, and I hope that the topics that we covered, the types, the concept, the scope, the evolution, and we also went into the history of OER in the traditional, in the ancient times, in the scriptures and so on. But the future of OER is going to be much more interesting for all of us. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you so much for sharing those valuable insights with us regarding OER at length. Now, we have a few questions for you. So, let me take the very first one. Here, the viewer is asking that what opportunities exist for collaboration and sharing of OER among educators and institutions?
There are umpteen opportunities. Now, I was mentioning about an initiative of my own organization where we have brought teachers of 9th standard mathematics who teach mathematics at 9th standard and asked them as to which are the concepts they find it very difficult to teach and which are the concepts that the learners are finding it very difficult to learn. Now, they enlisted hundreds of topics. They said 9th standard, the level is actually steep for some learners. We see a lot of girls dropping out of STEM subjects. So, they identify the topics collectively. Now, we gave them the challenge, solve this collectively and come up with open education resources, and very shortly we are publishing hundreds of newer ways of teaching the same concepts in a much more innovative manner, where the teachers are able to collaborate and share their content in the open education realm. And this is a great example of how teachers could collaborate and publish content, and they become the benefactors. They could basically give their knowledge for free to the millions of other mathematics teachers, not only in India but in other geographies, because the subject is the same and the difficult level is the same, and what you do to demystify that could go places under your name but for free for people to consume.
So, you also talked about, in the presentation about the translation, that how the content was translated. And whenever you translate some content from one language to another, there is always a fear of losing the context or losing the meaning. And today we are talking about AI. So, the question is, what role can AI play in identifying and addressing potential biases or inaccuracies in OER content, especially while translating it?
This is a very good question, because AI is something that is learning every single day.
Yes.
And the super intelligent AI is yet to come, and when it actually comes, it's a dangerous situation. Now, that said, now in India itself, we have two major government-driven AI tools available for translation.
Okay.
Bhashini, which is the Ministry of Education that is supporting Bhashini, and Anuvadini and Chutuki. These are tools the AICTE are promoting. These two tools are very interesting, where Bhashini can easily translate textual content. It can convert text to speech.
Okay.
It could convert speech to text. It can also convert the superscript in a video. So, you feed in a video lecture in a particular language, you can get the output in another language.
Okay, great.
So, but that said, there are issues around the quality and the biases that you mentioned, which is where the human intervention is extremely important.
Yeah.
Now, the one and the only way that a human can be in the loop of AI is to ensure that the quality of content, quality of anything that we publish is something that's contextualized, relevant to our audience, and ensuring that our audience could understand. That's where the human factor. So, we need to learn to work with AI tools, but also make ourselves superior in terms of finally publishing something useful.
Absolutely. So human beings are eventually having all the control, and AI is certainly not replacing them. Now, sir, there is another important question that we have received from one of the viewers. What lessons do you think we can learn from existing OER projects, and how can they inform future initiatives?
Well, I think the awareness on OER is very low. Now, we have 8.5 million teachers in our country, and if I do a dipstick study, I would won't be surprised only 1/10 of the teaching community is aware of OER.
Right, right.
So I think we need to create more and more awareness, provide a lot of training to people in terms of giving them the confidence that they are not mere users or teachers who teach a textbook which was produced by somebody else.
Right.
As teachers, they can master, they can be creators, they can be publishers. I think that confidence we need to provide to them, and we need to create a lot of projects.
Right.
Such as the one that I mentioned in mathematics. We need projects in biology and chemistry, all sorts of subjects. So that's how we promote the use of OER.
I was myself not that much aware about OER. I mean, getting some really important information from this session. Now, one last question, sir. How do you think, because you talked about diversity, inclusivity, and equity as well, how do you think that OER can be used to support, innovative and I would say personalized learning, and that too across the cultures, because we have diverse learners with diverse learning styles, and I think it's not just restricted to some particular geography, but we want to access global resources. How OER can be helpful in that?
Well, with technology advancing and quantum computing coming up, you have the ability to share content in a high speed, high network situation where huge files can be transferred in a zippy. You don't have to struggle hard to actually access content. But that said, you need to encourage teachers to be in the loop in contextualizing that content.
True.
Whatever you get globally needs to be translated to the personalized learning needs of the students. So
from the local context?
Yeah, to the local context. So from the same content, teachers should be empowered to create 30 different versions of that content for the 30 different learning styles of the students, and that capacity building is needed so that the teachers can exploit technology and make that technology as a subservient tool rather than limited by this idea that technology would provide everything and we need to simply follow. I think we need to be masters out there.
Absolutely. So that was such a wonderful journey with you, Dr. Shadrach, and I must thank you for your time and contribution to the session. It was indeed an eye-opening session, and it has set the tone for the forthcoming sessions. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
And viewers, now I'm going to wrap up this session over here. Today we were in day 1 of our online training on Open Educational Resources, OER, Innovating Education. On day 1 we talked about open educational resources, concept, scope and evolution. I hope that you too have gained an understanding of what OER is and how it is going to be beneficial, and through the history how it evolved and what is the present scenario. So in case you want to watch the session again, it's there on our YouTube handle, and if you want to attempt the assessment, I will request you to kindly watch it again, and don't forget to participate in the forthcoming sessions also. So it's a wrap for day 1, and before I finally exit the studio, some more important updates for you. Yes, it's about the textbooks which are available on Amazon, Flipkart and NCERT website for grade 4 and 7 specifically. And apart from that, you can take a look at the schedule, what's all coming ahead. So in a short while from now, you can watch our session, Sahyog, where we will be talking about one very important topic. It's about the mental health and the intellectual part of it. So please make sure that you watch the session and you participate. It's there to provide you psychological support. With this, it's a wrap. This is me, Harpreet Kaur, taking leave of you. Namaskar.